Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
To celebrate the Island Influencers podcast first birthday and the 50th episode, the spotlight has changed a little bit this week. My production team, Catherine and James, thought that Adam Owen, head of content at NextGen Planners in the UK, agreed to interview me. And of course, I'm the host of Island Influencers, Sharon Sutton. And for those who don't know me, here's a chance to get to know me a little bit more. And for those who do perhaps know me a bit, here's an opportunity to discover something you didn't know. So I've shared some childhood stories explaining what drives me and why I want to surround myself with people on a similar journey, and my long-term love of sports and music. So hopefully you'll pick up some advice for small business owners. I'll share some of the challenges that I've faced in the past, today, and also my hopes for the future. So here's this week's conversation with me, Sharon Sutton, in episode 50 of Island Influencers.
Sharon, hello. And this is a really unusual setting for you and I, isn't it? Because this time you're the other side of the microphone and the interview guest. So we're celebrating 50 episodes of the Island Influencers podcast. And over that whole time, you've interviewed some great guests from the Isle of Man and influencers to the Isle of Man. So tell me a little about some of the highlights.
Gosh, go straight in for it. Why don't you, Adam? Well, you know... We launched Series 1 2020 at the start of lockdown, in the first lockdown last year when COVID became, oh, well, this is a bit more serious than we thought. So we're all going to stay at home, stay safe. So this is exactly when we'd chosen to launch it. And it had been sort of in the pipeline for quite a while. And I'd been recording with guests. So I guess the ones that stand out for me from back then, given it was such a traumatic time for everybody, really, you know, we were all sort of facing, I suppose, the first time that many of us in our lifetimes had experienced being on that sort of first level of Maslow, you know, the sort of, food and shelter. Are we going to get anything? Is the boat going to come in? So, the comforting it was to hear voices that had been recorded in person and not over on an obvious, like a Zoom link, which I think you can always tell the difference. So Bob Jevons was a very generous guest. He just sold Tynwald Mills to Edinburgh Woolen Mills, who of course have been through their own journey since. But Bob was a fabulous first guest to have so many ideas. And if you're listening to this, go back to listen to Bob's episode. You know, phenomenal brain and so much talent. So that one sticks in my memory, as does Bill Dale, Beach Buddies, two pretty high profile characters in the Isle of Man, and Bob and Bill very, very trusting to give a rookie like me the opportunity to interview them and find out their deepest, most innermost secrets almost, and didn't hold back. So that sort of set the tone of the authenticity, if you like, for the episodes that came after. I've had some phenomenal guests. It's been a real, people say it's a cliche, but it has been a real privilege to meet so many real influences of our great community.
Fantastic. And 50 episodes is quite a milestone. It takes a lot to plan and deliver all of those episodes. So what has been the most challenging thing, particularly going through various states of lockdown, in just pulling all of this together over the last 12 months?
I guess for the first lockdown was a challenge. We'd had about 5 or 6 episodes recorded already, so that was good. And then kindly, Ravina Talbot, who is had been a mental health nurse in her time, she contacted me and said, I can do a well-being podcast if that's any help, and give people access or links to lots of resources that they may not know about. She and I had a Zoom call, and she lives in Dalby. And for those who don't know the island that well, Dalby is on the west coast of the island, between Peel and, well, closer to Peel than Port Erin. but there's no Wi-Fi. Well, there's very little in the way of internet out there. It's not, fiber's not reached that yet. So it was a bit of a challenge with that. But not only that, we had the guys just finishing off installing our solar panels because they had half the roof off when the lockdown happened. So there was hammering on the roof. It was a bit challenging. But planning the guests, so to get people to volunteer like that was super. And sometimes, before I started, I just made a list of who it would be I'd love to know all about, and I've still got people on that list to tick off. But yeah, it's been a challenge, and I couldn't have done it without the support of our team at Thornton, who have been great to indulge me going off and spending time doing this, but also the team at Bamford. Catherine Watts is my producer, and James, my editor, who are just great. They cut out all the waffle, and so you probably won't hear this. So
I'm sure they'll leave most of this in, Sharon, at least a reasonable amount anyway. So I think it's really interesting that you say there's been a lot of support, and you are a chartered financial planner on the island. And
yeah, did you get that in the introduction?
I think we did get the introduction, absolutely. And you've got a great team there at Thornton. So how have the team adapted over this last 12 months?
Oh gosh, we were so lucky. A few years ago, when we were based in Athol Street, we made the decision that investing in a new server, which was going to cost, gazillions, to me, it didn't make sense when you have to upgrade that sort of stuff all the time and then have to run your updates yourself. So I spoke to Ryan Cleater of IT Works, and he managed to put a cloud in place. So we'd had a cloud running probably for about, I guess, 4 years or so before lockdown hit. So the team were just able to pivot to working from home the next day. So we were straight away. We all had devices. We all had sufficient internet to be able to do this. So we had a Zoom call the next morning, and there were some pretty worried faces there on the team. And Jules and I, we're so grateful to the people that we have in our team, and we just said, look, everybody's, we're going to come through this together. There will be no redundancies. We're going to do this together. It was an obvious thing to give everybody the confidence that that's what we were going to do. Markets sort of plummeting. You need to have confidence and trust in the people around you. And how can you do that if they don't trust you to do the right thing? And doing the right thing is, they're your business family, and you've got to look after them. And you've got to look after your clients, of course. That's primary. But looking after your team. You can't look after your clients without your team.
Yeah, and you've spent a long time looking after your clients and other people's money. And one of your favorite questions on the podcast, I've noticed, is to ask about people's earliest memories of money. So it would be remiss of me not to ask you that question. Tell us what your earliest memory of money is, and how was money for you growing up?
Sure, yeah. So you go back in time, and I've done a coaching course recently, and I think I realized, gosh, I've been making an awful lot of stuff up about what happened to me when I was growing up. So growing up, earliest memories of money were like most kids, getting paper, folding money at your birthday. And I remember lots of coloured notes. So that would have been all the different sort of types of notes in circulation in the Isle of Man in that time, which would have been, I don't know, the late 60s. I do remember having folding stuff, so early 70s probably. And I do remember them coming into school with plastic 1 pennies and 2 penny pieces to teach us all about decimalisation. So I do remember that. I remember counting halfpennies and pennies and, the old sixpences and stuff. And my grandma had a jar, and it was the shape of a horse's head, I think. It must have been a Lloyd's thing. Yeah, I remember that. But I remember when I was 9, my parents divorced, and that had quite a lot of challenges that presented to us as a family. His mum she'd ran her own business in the basement of our home, our family home, a kindergarten. So I knew a lot of kids going to school already, having known them from sort of age 2 or 3 or however old we all were back then. But of course, when we left Dad in the family home, she couldn't do that anymore. So she had to go cleaning she had at least 4 part-time jobs, I remember, to try and make ends meet. And back in those days, the family courts, they kind of weren't I think we're still in a whole community. We're still following on from this misogynistic patriarchy that exists, and it's becoming less and less. But let's give it its proper title. And I think we were quite disadvantaged as a family. But that said, we were so rich in other ways. The experiences that we had. I got well involved in music and sport. Things I would never have done probably, but for the fact seeking this. I don't know, this belonging, this family that had been, in my eyes as a 9-year-old, ripped apart. And all right, we did see Dad a bit at weekends, but that got less and less as time went on, as he had a new family. And Mum was really resilient, I think. And she's made myself and my sister what we are today, but we still made up an awful lot of stuff about ourselves, about how we need to be the best and we need to try hard. And so I learned I can give up that way of pretending that, it's all about that. I can just, instead of being my own worst enemy, I can actually try and be a bit more of my own number one fan. And that took a lot of figuring out, but I think I'm there now. I'm much, much happier, have much better relationships with both my parents and my sister. And that was quite revelationary, and goes back to those days. So it made me realize that emotion codes a lot of memories, and it's strange human psychology, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I think it definitely gives you a perspective when you're working with clients as well, doesn't it? So how do you think that has shaped the work that you do?
Well, it's definitely led me to try to uncover a lot more stuff about what's going on in people's heads and why they have a particular attitude and behavior from how they are being about something. Because let's face it, everybody is weird about money. I read a book, I shared it with you, it's by Richard Wagner, Financial Planning 3.0. And I read that in 2016, 17, I think. And it was, that uncovered a lot of myths about money. I mean, it had never occurred to me that this stuff, money, was man-made. And because of that, the natural emotions that we have, we don't have any natural emotion or capability how to deal with money because it's made up stuff. So how can we expect any other behavior around this stuff which surrounds us and affects every decision in life that we have to make without giving somebody some instruction manual how to deal with it? In anything else, in any other field, that would be called negligence. And yet we don't give anybody any training how to use this stuff. Really weird.
You mentioned before that your experiences as a child gave you and your sister this drive to do better and to work hard. And that took you into areas of music and sport, you mentioned. Tell me a little about what things you found the most fulfilling and enjoying in terms of just those things that you've done as you've gone through your career that are maybe outside of financial planning.
Sure. Well, so the music, I didn't take it that far. I took it to, so I started it when I was about 9, took up the tin whistle thanks to my teacher at Albert Road School, Mike Bolton, who's actually an earlier guest. What an amazing guy. He's influenced so many people, so many youngsters throughout and he's still doing it, at 80, whatever he is, he's still getting people to take up music and play the harp, making harps. And so Mike gave myself and my friends Mei Ying and Su Ling, who were I think the only other kids in my school that had one parent families that I knew of. So we had quite a lot of time to spend together. So we got into music. We did things like, don't laugh, the Celtavision Song Contest, which is. So Mei Ying composed a tune and Mike put the Manx words to it. And we went over to Killarney in the south of Ireland and we sang in the Pan-Celtic original composition song category. And we were in it. Obviously, there were 6 Celtic countries in those days. And I think there's more now. And I think we got 3rd, which was all right. We did okay.
An achievement, absolutely. 3rd.
We were all youngsters. I think I was 13. I might have been 12 or 13. So we had to have chaperones going, obviously, because our families couldn't go with us. So that was my first memory of going away, really, with my friends. The music. Yeah, we had a band called Munja Vega, which meant the little people, but no one could ever pronounce it. And eventually got to go to the Inter-Celtic Festival in Norion. And my memory of that with me and my tin whistle and my flute Mum had bought me a flute somehow from an insurance policy. There you go, a bit of a money related aside there. So we turn up for this parade in Lorient, and the start point, if you can imagine, I'm playing Manx music for the Manx dancers, and we all have to take part in this grand parade, which takes place on a Sunday morning in Lorient City, and you parade through the streets. And it's a massive thing. There's nothing that has ever happened in the Isle of Man that you can compare it to. It's a massive, massive parade, or it used to be before COVID. And one statistic that stuck in my mind is that there were 73 pipe bands in this parade. That's right, 73 pipe bands. 6 of them were, as you would think of a pipe band, pipes and drums. So there were 3 from Northern Ireland. I didn't even know they played bagpipes in Northern Ireland. And 3 pipe bands from Scotland. Some pretty big hitters, actually, that have all gone on, I think, subsequently to become world champions in their own right. So the others, how many is, what's 73 less 6?
I think that's 67.
There you go, a little early morning test. 67 of these bands were what you call a bagad. So it was a Breton pipe band. So they were larger than a typical pipe band, although some were smaller, but mainly larger because they also contained pipes, drums, and a bombard, which is an oboe, primitive oboe, ear splitting, and it goes up above another octave that bagpipes only do 1 octave, but these things go even higher. So yeah, me and my tin whistle, maying and a mandolin. I'm not going to, if I'm coming back here, I'm going to come back with my own pipe band. Anyway, I never did, but I did go back and start a pipe band. So that's what I did with that. So with the sport, Mike had also started up Northern Athletic Club. So we all got into running. So I was lucky. I seemed to be good at sport. So I got into sprinting, and I kept that going. And before injuries and stuff stepped in, I was a sprinter. So I represented the Isle of Man in the first Island Games in 1985, which was the year of sports. And I ran in the 100 and the 200 and the 4x1. And we won the gold medal in the 4x1, but I got silver. And yeah, there were faster girls than me in that. So I took up hockey. Hockey was something you did at school. So played county hockey for a bit, which was way above. I think it was just because I was fast. I wasn't particularly skillful, but I could run fast. And then eventually got into triathlon via hockey, which I did to keep my fitness up, doing the running. And I discovered cycling, and I loved that. So I did triathlon. I really loved doing that. Competed, did okay, but I was. We sponsor Will Draper at the moment, he's just turned professional as a triathlete in the half Ironman discipline, which is insanely impressive. And I decided I couldn't do triathlon too much because I didn't like swimming, the sensation of swimming in a washing machine, which if anybody's ever done an open water swim, the start is like being in a washing machine because you've got all these people around you, all ultra competitive. And I'm thinking, I'm fearful. I don't want to find a jellyfish if it's a sea. And I just like swimming pools. I like to follow a line on the bottom. There's no line in the mere or the reservoir or the sea. And there's a tide in the sea. Yeah. And then people, they swim over you, under you, through you. It's not for me. And then I discovered that running long distances, again, I'm not built as a distance runner, I'm not built as a distance cyclist, to be honest with you, not when there's any hills involved. I was okay. I could manage to stick on the bunch if it was a relatively flat circuit, and I could always have a good sprint at the end and typically win if I hung on, sort of almost like Mark Cavendish does in the Tour de France, but at a way, way lower level than that. But back in the day, there's been some really fantastic cyclists from the Isle of Man, and I'm not one of them. Such great role models, Marie Purvis, who was Marie Morgan. She went to the Olympics. She was an amazing role model for me in cycling. And during my time of cycling, I cycled with my teammate, Jackie Fletcher. She was great, a mother of 3 at the same time as, competing with me. And so we were teammates a lot of the time through the Island Games, Commonwealth Games. And so I sort of went to the Commonwealth eventually with Jackie. It was unfortunate that it was a hilly circuit at Rivington. So I had the distinction of being the first cyclist in the Commonwealth Games on the road, because I was first down the ramp in the time trial, and I had this helicopter over my head. I was on TV, and I was going down the road and thinking, well, it's not going to be long before I get overtaken, and it wasn't. But God, this must be what it's like in the TT with the helicopter overhead. This is fun. So And then on the road race, which was the following weekend, it was again same hilly course, and I'm competing with Nicole Cook and Rachel Heel, and at the start line, you're kind of on this start line with 37 in field, me and Jackie and Anne Bowditch from Guernsey, and the rest were all professional cyclists, and there was us three, and I'm stood here amongst all these pro bikers, people I've seen on TV. Well, not much in those days. There wasn't much women cycling on telly, to be honest, but I knew who they were. And it occurred to me that, they were in their office, these girls, and in their office, they have a set of handlebars and a bike. And I'm thinking, actually, these handlebars, this is my hobby. My desk has got a telephone on it and a computer. Give yourself a break. So I rode on the front a couple of laps. And as anyone knows with cycling, that it's not obviously riding on the front that matters, and you don't win if you ride on the front because you need to keep out of the wind unless you attack and you go off on a breakaway. Well, I wasn't going to do any of that, but I rode on the front so my mum could tell everybody that I led the Commonwealth Games road race on telly. So I did that. That's it.
Fantastic. And there's a very few people that can probably say that. So very well done. And you've taken some of that competitive spirit into business. I know you are very keen to grow the business and develop financial planning professionally, but you also advise other business owners and entrepreneurs. So, for any aspiring business owners listening, what would be some of your main tips?
If you're going to run a business, you have to know about where money goes and where money comes from. So, managing your cash flow is crucial. But at the same time, you need to surround yourself with people who are on the same journey as you and people who care like you do. So, I've been lucky over the last few years to have got in place the best team anybody could ever want. Clever, passionate, loyal, honest, caring people. And, if you can surround yourself with those sorts of people in your business, that's great. And I have to also say about the clients that we have, your clients they're the lifeblood of your business. Without clients, you don't have a business. But we've got more than our share of same sort of people, clever, passionate, helpful, but also friends. I think you have to find what you love. And if you don't love what you do, then you need to find another career. So I was lucky that I found this career, helping others, having that trust in me and, me trusting them that I could deliver what I said I was going to deliver. And that's it, deliver what you say, just do what you say, and be responsive. It's not hard to shine in business sometimes. You come across other businesses, and when I get treated a certain way, would I be happy that if I was a client of my business, if I got treated that way? And you have to put yourself in their shoes. So I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. And of course, it's not all about business. You do get time to relax. So tell me a little about what you do to relax and how do you keep your life in balance?
Well, I still, sport's still a big stress buster for me. So I still go to the gym, although these days I have to hire a personal trainer. So shout out to Juin Chung, my personal trainer, who is relentless but patient, makes me show up, makes me do things I don't want to do, counts to 10 or 15 or 20, 3 times, and then makes me do it all over again. It's so that's for me is important. Getting out on my mountain bike. So Wednesday mornings we try to get a ride in, Jules and I, and off-road. So that's fun. I really enjoy. I love cycling, and the island it just lends itself. There's so many different places you can go. You'd never. I mean, we got lost. I was born here. And I know the place like the back of my hand. And we got lost last Wednesday morning in the middle of Stony Mountain Plantation. Don't ask me how, but we did. We got lost. So it's possible to get lost, especially off-road. I don't recommend it. So we need to do more recceing of where we go, really. So I do that. What else? I'd read, gardening. I got into last lockdown. I started to grow some vegetables, which I hadn't done since I was a kid. And that's been wonderful. And then I decided, in conjunction with another friend who's got not one, but 2 massive greenhouses now, thought, actually, this is mega. I've got to do this. I have to have greenhouses or a greenhouse. So got a greenhouse. Eventually, it was just commissioned. I just started to be able to use it on the beginning of March, just this year. And now I think I may have bitten off more than I can chew, because everything's just suddenly grown massively. Yeah, and it needs watering all the time. Who knew plants could be so needy?
Well, for the benefit of our listeners, I've seen pictures of your greenhouse, Sharon. And when you say greenhouse, I think small market garden would probably be a more accurate description of the amount of plants and fruits and vegetables that you're growing at the moment. So yes, I can see that would be taking quite a considerable time to ensure that all of that is watered. But when you're not pursuing the good life and self-sufficiency, then you do take a keen interest in politics on the island and also the challenges that the Isle of Man faces. So what do you see to be the main challenges in 2021 going into 2022?
Yeah, it's interesting, Adam. This year is the Isle of Man general election, which happens in September. And we've already had a couple of announcements. A good friend of mine, Mr. President, is stepping down. So there's going to be a new president of Tynwald. But also, yeah, there are going to be a few changes. I think, this podcast has never been about politics. It's been about being positive and trying to affect change positively in the island. And this is to do our bit as entrepreneurs, community leaders, business owners. Because when government's there to lead, to provide social care, policy and education, and all those good things that government provides, health services. But we're the innovators, and so I think we should lead with ideas. And I think we could do a lot more with our regulation. We're so fortunate. We've got a great regulator, financial services regulator here that's always been really responsive. I've had a great relationship over the years. And we've worked together on things like the retail distribution review, bringing up into minimum professional standards. But I think there's a lot more we can do. And I'm really sorry that Karen Badrow is leaving. I think she's been a wonderful innovator here. And Claire Whiteleg, of course, has recently left too. So I'm looking forward to working with whoever else is coming along. But I think we could do so much here. I think you and I have spoken about it, Adam, about the regulatory sandbox that we could put in place, that the UK regulator has never had the bottle to do it. And we could, because we've got defined borders, defined populations. We've also got amazing things here called junior achievement. And you won't know about it in the UK, but junior achievement is run by Sue Cook, who was a guest. I was so thrilled to interview Sue only a few weeks ago. If I'd had my way, she'd have been one of my first guests. And I believe that what she's doing, what they are doing with their mentorship program, is just such a great blueprint that the rest of the UK could follow. I think that needs to be given greater support. There's lots of areas. I don't think the Isle of Man's economic future is going to be predicated around everybody growing weed, but it's been legalized for export. So let's see where that goes. I also interviewed Paul Crane recently, and Paul's done a great survey on the demographics of the island, but he also had a lot to say about climate change and how the Isle of Man's emissions policy is very lacking. So, I mean, to see what we've done, which is nothing for the past 5 years, okay, you can understand it in the last 18 months, well, last year, but over the last 5 years, really, we can do better. Come on, Isle of Man, we can do a lot better than that with renewables, with wind turbine, all that sort of stuff. We can do so much better. So I'm interested to see that. Rebecca George, who's the chief exec of Chamber, her and her team just put together a survey, which was sent around to all members just very recently, about what would you like to see on manifestos for candidates, which is a fabulous initiative. So well done her and the team for doing that. So I would encourage all business leaders to answer that and just give people a steer on, what really matters. Yeah, okay, having sort of small local issues, which are very important to some people, I get that. But, there's a bigger picture here. And I think we need to focus on things like that and lend support to those who do have the right attitude and common sense, if that's not too much to ask.
A good point. Yeah, absolutely. So we started the interview celebrating the first 50 episodes of the podcast, but I'm really interested to hear what the plans are going forward for the podcast and maybe beyond.
I've got a lot more guests to get on the podcast. So there's a list somewhere. And I've got a few people lined up ahead. And obviously anybody listening to this who has a story to tell and wants to tell it and wants to share something constructive and positive, not standing for election, I'd love to hear from you. But Island Influencers, I hope that it will develop into a private social network of putting together entrepreneurs and others and business owners in a private network that they can actually go ahead and discuss and affect change. So I'm excited how to do that. One of the things I've really wanted to do with the podcast is to take some highlights out of it and to eventually publish some sort of book, hopefully in the future. But hey, 100 episodes isn't too far off. It's only another 50. And I've had immense fun doing this. So I don't want to stop. You know, who knows? Maybe one day Manx Radio will knock on the door. What do you reckon? But what if they did?
What if they did? Absolutely. Why not? That sounds really exciting. And it wouldn't be an Island Influencers podcast without asking you for a book recommendation. So what book would you recommend people read in the second half of 2021?
So my reading list has changed a bit. I've read a lot of books. And I'm a member of a book club, which is with one of the group of mums from school. At the moment, we're reading Nothing But Blue Sky, which is by Kathleen McMahon. So that I don't know if I'd recommend it, but that's what I'm reading right now. For gardeners, My Garden World by Monty Don. I got that for my birthday from my darling husband. And but some really good books. I think I mentioned Financial Planning 3.0 by Richard Wagner. That's great for non-financial planners too. It's a really decent background to the history of money and why it's so important. And yeah, that's a good read. Carl Richards, The One-Page Financial Plan. That's amazing. And Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed that's inspirational, as is his book, Black Box Thinking. That's good too.
Fantastic. We'll check those out. And Sharon, that brings us to the end of our time today. It's been an absolute delight and a pleasure to interview you. And thank you for inviting me onto the podcast to do that today. But it's your show. And so I think I should leave you with the last word. And what would you say to your listeners of these first 50 episodes?
I've said it before, it's been a privilege to do it. It has. I've learned something from everybody. And it never ceases to amaze me just what talent that we've got here and what generous people to have shared their ideas and best selves in recording with me. You know, that's been humbling. It has. It really has. You know, I think we are as a community stronger together. It's no secret that we need new residents going forward. And if you have family and friends that live wider afield, I know lots of us have friends and family living around the globe, perhaps you could share this episode with them. I know it's really got a good following from the download statistics we can see in North America. And I know there's a big North American Manx Association around the world. And, you know, to bring people back to live in a place like this, where there's still lots of open space, a really good lifestyle, and, you know, the ability to bring up your kids in a safe environment. I mean, what better? You know, there's so much to offer here. So, you know, please do share it with those who you would love to come and live here again one day or for the first time.
Sharon Sutton, thank you for the first 50 episodes, and here's to the next 50.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.